All right, let's talk about time management for creatives in detail. And us creatives, we're often not very good at time management, unfortunately, but that's the reality. We often don't ask for enough time to complete projects and end up creating a lot of stress and strain as we struggle to hit deadlines. And sometimes we can be very bad at even just estimating how long a project is going to take to put together. That can also be a real challenge for us. And another challenge that we sometimes experience is the communication around deadlines. As things start to slip, sometimes we have a tendency to bury our head in the sand and not communicate that we're in trouble, that we need more time. This can also be a difficulty. And just seeing how to manage timelines, how to manage milestones, we should talk about this and see if we can get ourselves more organized so that we are more professional and more dependable, and we're able to support the people who are trying to help us succeed in our projects. So, first off, time estimates. Let's talk about this. Time estimates. And sometimes we find it very difficult to know how long is it going to take to become inspired to do a great project? How long is it going to take for us to prototype, figure out what we want to do, get down to the production of the actual work? So try this. As you estimate how long it's going to take you, and your brain is going to perhaps optimistically estimate for you how long it thinks things are going to take, just double the number. If your brain says that it's going to take you 4 hours to do something, just buffer it and say, I'm going to take 8 hours. If you need 5 business days to do a project, and maybe in your mind that means 5 18-hour days, maybe with one overnighter, let's not get into that habit. Just double what you're saying. Say that you need 10 business days. Generally, things always take longer than we estimate, especially if it's down to us to do the work. So try that. For the optimists in the room, just be aware that we tend to not estimate enough. So you just need to figure out how much you're going to buffer things. Bear in mind that if there are clients involved, there's other people that have to look at the work. If you have a creative director like me that's overseeing what you're doing, if there's a brand manager that's overseeing what you're doing, an agency that's involved that you're producing for, you also need to factor in that there's approval processes. There's going to be scenarios of back and forth, receiving feedback, collating notes, and that also adds to the timeline, and you need to factor that in as well for your time estimates. So that's estimating time. Just remember, on a high level, always buffer. Now, the other thing I said at the beginning of this video is that sometimes we are afraid to ask for the amount of time that we need. So we want to avoid this situation where you haven't asked for enough time at the beginning of the project because you might be afraid that you might not get the project. It's not helpful to anyone. If you haven't asked for enough time, you said you can do the project, there might be a deadline coming that there's PR agencies involved, there's other marketing departments involved, there might be ad buys for the project that you're doing. Because in the long run, if you blow a very important deadline, especially if it happens right before the deadline, this can be very bad for your reputation. And you may have potential benefactors and clients who might not want to work with you again. If there's an art gallery that you're doing a show at and you've got a premiere and they book all the PR, they book the party, you're flying people into the launch, and then you don't produce enough work for the actual gallery, well, be very bad for you. So I would encourage you to always make sure that you ask for enough time. That is lesson number 2. Lesson number 1, buffer time. Lesson number 2, ask for enough time. Here's the third thing for us to look at: prioritization. Us creatives, we can often be non-linear with what we work on. Some of us may be procrastinators as well. We put off working on things, or we may want to do the fun stuff first, and the important work, which might be a bit more of a grind, which we don't want to do, we put that off. we're unable to prioritize between what really needs to be done and what we want to do and what we're inspired to do. It takes a bit of discipline to not work on something that's fun and exciting and inspirational and have to go into another part of a project, which might be a bit more of a grind, or we just don't have the inspiration and we're not excited. I find the best way to prioritize is just make a list and write down everything that you have to do and then just order them around. What is red? What is absolutely critical? What is an area of dependency that other people are waiting for you to do the work so that other parts of the project can move forward? Work on those things first. I'm sorry to say, we got to adult here. We got to be professional creatives. Learn how to prioritize. Now, in terms of tracking projects, it is helpful that you have some kind of organizational system. Whether you write things down in a notebook and you have checklists, whether you have some other kind of tracking system, you need to make sure that you're organized. Don't keep things just completely in your head. I know that we want to be nonlinear. I know that we want to be in the creative soup all the time. We are artists, we are designers, we are performers. But if you're able to be organized in some way using some kind of system, I have an extensive note-taking system. I use Google Keep. And of course, I work on larger scale projects, so I have the luxury of having producers and production managers who are tracking what we're doing. But even so, I keep extensive notes, and at the beginning of every week, I write down what are the priorities for that week. Also, keep a calendar. Make sure that you write down deadlines in a calendar and that you're tracking what is coming up at any moment, and make sure that you organize everything that's happening over the course of a day. And my last tip for you in terms of time management and getting work done, I sometimes create artificial deadlines. I sometimes will book the presentation for a creative project even before I've started working. So I may have a presentation or a creative proposal that I need to do. I will book the presentation meeting. So I have a hard deadline that I'm going to work towards. And that will get me up and running. I need pressure. And so I create external pressure on myself because I need to be bouncing up against a deadline of some kind to do a project. I'm hacking myself by creating artificial pressure because I need these lines in the sand. Hard deadline. I have to have this work done by that moment because sometimes I'm waiting for inspiration. This is something that I can pass on to you, is create deadlines for yourself. That can be quite handy. I also recommend that you figure out when you can be most productive and see if you can figure out at what times in the day you have peak energy, you're more creative, you're more ready to get into a creative zone. For me, that's usually night. So I will plan out and schedule to work on a project late. And I'll tell everyone that's in my life, okay, I'm going to work until 2 a.m. And that's what I need. So I may during the day do my notes. I'll write down a framework of what I want to do, but I do like working after dinner into the morning. All right. So I hope all that was useful for you. And just remember, you have to work on these other aspects of being a professional creative. It's not only about doing the work, but it's also about having other skill sets. Time management, being able to estimate work, being professional, being able to interface with brands, being reliable. Because if you want to be a professional creative, people have to trust that you're going to deliver, and that if they're giving you ever increasing budgets to work with, there's more at stake. Well, you have to develop these parts of your skill set. Okay? Cheers.